What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Kemple with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. I'm super excited. You guys know I love my artists. They are dear to my heart because I love music. I understand the struggle. I know what it's like chasing your passion. We have an awesome gentleman joining us today. Excuse me, can't talk much. He's been involved in music since he was 6. He signed on to Sony BMG in 2005, I believe. That's what I'm reading.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's produced several albums and is following his passion, loves what he does, and has spent his lifetime committed to music. Please welcome Tom Tikka. Tom, thank you for being here today. Can you please introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about your background?
Well, yeah, Finnish American rock and roller. I've always loved music, and it's true. I wrote my first song when I was 6. Not a great song, and the worst part is that I still remember it. I've always been madly in love with soda, and so quite aptly, this song was titled "Coca-Cola Song."
Oh.
It's weird because it's a hideous tune. It's something that a 6-year-old might remember. There were better ones that I wrote a couple of years later. I don't remember those, but for some very strange reason, Coca-Cola Song has burned on my brain. So anyway, started from there. Got a very small recording contract when I was 16, even a smaller one when I was 21. All of it fell through. Quit music for a couple of years until Carmen Gray well, the band was put together. It was my brother's band to begin with. It's a long story. Make it short here. We got signed by Sony BMG. That was about a decade's worth of material. It was a great part of my life, many radio hits, and just when you drive around in your car and you hear your song on the radio multiple times a day, it was fantastic. Obviously that came to an end.
Sure.
And all bands break up at some point, and then once again I was back in square one, and that's when the Impersonators basically came about, and then and that was 5 or 6 years until we got signed to FBP Music Group based out of Frankfurt, Germany.
Very cool.
And slowly but surely, the group was becoming more and more successful. Nothing compared to Carmen Gray, but baby steps. And this was a smaller project to begin with. But we started getting small radio hits and great reviews and award nominations. And then I started working with Michael Stover and MTS Records, and Michael asked me, have you ever considered doing a solo album? And that's how Tom Tikka and the Missing Hubcaps was basically born. The name has an interesting story behind it. My dad was very crazy about cars. He was actually a tire salesman. In the early days when he was young, and later on he owned his own company. But he loved cars. I didn't share his passion for automobiles, but it was very important for him that whenever we washed the car or did something to check the oil or change the tires, he wanted his eldest son to be there with him doing it, so he could sort of teach me. Well, this one time, and this was I think it was in San Francisco, I was sort of forced. My mom said, go ahead, go help out your dad. He's going to be in a bad mood all night if you don't. And so I'm there thinking about music, which was always the case. I was 16 at the time, and one of the hubcaps came off, right? And they usually just spin and they fall to the ground, but this particular one, because San Francisco's it's got big hills, started going down one of the hills. And these were sort of custom made hubcaps for my dad, rather expensive. And we're both looking at the hubcap going downhill, and there's a bus that comes and basically runs over it. It was in a million pieces. And he said that, you're always thinking about music. I don't like the band name. I don't remember what we were called. He hated it. He said that you guys should be called the Missing Hubcaps, right?
Oh.
And I'm like, what a lame name. Never going for that.
No, that's not bad.
And hey, there it is. Sadly, my dad passed away a couple of years ago. And then when it was time for me to come up with a name for my solo venture, I thought, sort of to honor him. And he was always rooting me on anyways. I figured, it's time to, to get the old name and sort of take it out of a jar, and then the venture became Tom Tikka and the Missing Hubcaps. But anyway, that's a long intro. that's a long intro to everything that I'm doing, and but
Well, no, and it's necessary to build up and let the audience know, kind of where you've come from, what you've done, and you've done a lot. So I mean, not all artists can have, and I would say those are great accomplishments that you've had along the way. Whether they've fallen through or not.
sure, yeah,
Still, to get signed at 16, a small like that's kind of a big deal.
yeah. I mean, I was always very fortunate, really, because for some reason or another, people didn't just like my music, but they took interest in what I was doing,
Sure.
and it's continued to this day, for example, my working with Michael Stover, which started out just as label head and a musician, but in reality, Michael's a big part of what I'm doing because he's more or less. I mean, he is the executive producer on the
Sure.
Hubcaps albums, and so it's he. He doesn't have to be, but once again, like I said, I've been very fortunate to meet all these talented people, learn from them, and the fact that when they do take an interest in your music, they usually when they put time and effort towards it, it makes the music and the project a whole lot better. And that's basically that's what I mean when I say that I'd be very fortunate. Work
Yeah.
with talented people.
Yeah, and that's great. And I don't think every artist has that experience. Especially I
Indeed.
mean the ones that I've had the honor to talk to and listen to their story and just kind of support their craft. It's not always the case. So yeah, you've definitely been very fortunate. Um, so let's just talk about like what you've got going on now, and maybe you can give some advice to any of our artists out there and what they could possibly doing proactively to make the right moves to get themselves noticed.
That's a very difficult question to answer because I'm still sort of, it's weird. Like I said, I've been very lucky. I'm trying to figure that out still myself. But if I were to give one piece of advice, I think if somebody's listening and look, if you want to make it anywhere
Yeah,
with music, it has to be the most important thing in your life.
right.
It's one of those. It's not a job like people have, like even managing directors, or at one point in my life, I was a cost analysis manager. It those jobs, the day jobs, and even if you work a lot, it's not the same. So
Right.
you have to live, breathe. It just music has to be your everything.
Yeah.
So if I think that I don't think there was ever a time that I rather went to the beach than if I had the option of staying home and writing a song, that was always my first choice. It sounds boring, and
To stay
but
home
to me,
to stay
that
home
that that
right.
was it. You know, that was it. And I'm not very proud of this. I'm truly not. But I remember blowing off dates. If I got a great song idea,
Yeah.
and it just I'm thinking I'm gonna lose it because in those days you had to play the song enough times to remember the melody and or find some sort of recording device which wasn't your cell phone in back in the day because they didn't
No.
exist.
Yeah.
And so that's how into this I always was. As a much older dude, obviously, it's the same thing for me like it is for everybody else. My wife says jump, I say how high. And the same
Good
thing goes for
man. Happy
my
wife.
right. Hey,
Happy wife. Happy
yeah.
life. Smart.
And same thing with my kids, they take the priority. But this is back when I was 17 or 18. And I think that it's to basically just put it in one sentence, it has to be the most important thing in your life. And then you have a sort of a small opportunity, slim chance of making it anywhere. That's how brutal the business is.
Oh
And
well.
you got to be very good. You got to be very good. Memorable songs. It's not enough even to be good. Actually, it's just one pitfall after another. Yeah, I just
I feel like if you in what we do as artists, I can like I said before I started recording, I consider myself an artist. You have to definitely be 100% committed, really believe in what you're doing. And I mean, I'm not sure about how you feel about this, but really manifest in your mind where you want to go because there's power in those thoughts. And once you surrender yourself to your ultimate goal, your reality that reality that you want it to be, things happen magically for you, I feel like. So for you, I think that you've been able to do that, maybe like unconsciously, that you have been manifesting some of these opportunities to happen for you, and it's happened. So I think that you're a little bit ahead of the game with that.
Yeah, I mean, and the game's not, because it wasn't always easy. I think that when you go through your history, by the way, you're in Chicago, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I lived in Chicago for 3 years. It's a great city, and that's actually where I started my cost analysis career. I was a cost analysis coordinator in Chicago, but that's a different story.
Okay.
Worked in Oak Brook, but I remember when Carmen Gray got signed Sony Music, and then we went to the A&R guy, and it was time to sort of decide which songs we're going to record.
Okay.
And I remember him listening to the tracks that we had written, and he said that, yeah, these are fantastic. Now we just need to come up with a hit single.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we were like, well, how about this? I explained, not enough happening here, not enough happening there. Can you see like dead air here, just the instruments? Not, and I was at that point, I didn't understand, but then he sort of hooked us up with these tunesmiths, my brother and I. And so we wrote a couple of songs with them. And kind of hated the idea that we had to go to somebody to be good enough. But in retrospect, those were like, because we could have said, screw this, we're not doing any of this, bye. But we decided to sort of, kind of, both of us loved writing. And so we went along with it and met with these guys, and we wrote a couple of tracks with them, more than a couple, maybe 3 or 4. But the good part was that we kind of started learning, because we watched how they work,
Right.
and we're thinking, oh, so we're actually, 3 minutes, 17 seconds. That's it. You got to fit the whole thing there. Okay. And we learned about the structure, basically, they weren't doing anything we couldn't do ourselves. It was just that everybody needs that introduction, because there's a difference between writing a #1 hit and and obviously writing an album track kicks ass is completely different. It can be anything.
Right.
And so, because usually when people ask what I've done, it's just like, it sounds like it just went from one victory to another, or from one downfall to another. But there's a lot of stuff in between. And I think that one of the best things about being able to work with Sony BMG, for example, was to work these extremely, and I do not use this word loosely, extremely talented people who had been around forever. Sometimes they were record producers, sometimes they were professional songwriters. But I'm so glad that both my brother and I always took the attitude where we were just kind of like, we wanted to learn. We didn't, so we had to collaborate, big deal. And finally we got to the point where we became the tunesmiths. People started asking for us to write songs for them, or the record company sent those guys over to us to help them write. And so what a rewarding experience. It started out as like, oh my God, I don't want to do this, I'm not good enough, am I even going to make it? But it ended up being wonderful.
What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Kemple with Label Free Podcast. Live your best life. You must live label free. Ho, 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 ladies. The holidays came early, not only for you, but for your man here at Manscaped, the leading men's hygiene brand. Manscaped just launched new products that your man will actually use, including their all-new ultra premium body wash and a 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. Also, this awesome refined cologne. It smells so sexy. My man loves it. I love him wearing it, especially after he's all clean shaven, using the lawnmower 4.0 and trimming those nasty nose hairs and those ear hairs. You know what I'm saying, ladies? It's time to give the man in your life the gift of beautiful skin, hair, and balls this holiday season. Go to manscaped.com and use the code LABELFREE20 for 20% off and free shipping. That's right, ladies, 20% off and free shipping with the code LABELFREE20 at manscaped.com. I don't really believe in failure. I know that maybe we may have gone after something and it didn't turn out the way we wanted it to, but in those times, there are teachable moments, like what you're saying. You do learn, you evolve, and like I never even heard of a tunesmith before. That's like
they exist,
So it's different than a songwriter.
But these are, I guess they're called tunesmiths or professional songwriters, because they're not really, usually they're not artists themselves. They
Right.
just they're people who have a knack for writing.
Interesting.
And it's kind of like they can write tags.
Okay.
Tag would be something that if you know the Beach Boys, I Get Around, the
Yes,
way the
yes,
song
yes.
starts, round, round, get around, I'll
I
get
get
around.
around.
Yeah. And so that's a tag. Everybody can sing along.
Yeah.
Or, and then they have a gift for choruses, which are very important that you get those right, because that's the sing-along moment of each song.
Yeah.
And then again, now we're talking about crafting hit singles, but of course, if you're a rock and roll band, that's 1 or 2 tracks on your album, and then there's the rest of the album that usually, if you are talented and good enough, nobody's really going to say that we don't want this song.
Right.
But it's sort of a let's say that it's a different creative process.
Right.
And these people, and I mean this in the best possible way, they're a breed of their own.
Yeah.
Because they live in that world of sort of jingly type of,
Right.
which are very, very, very important.
So those are the kind of people that help create hits. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I just learned something completely new, and I'm sure any of my artists out there that are listening, if you're having a hard time creating a number one hit, find yourself a tunesmith.
Well, have the label do it.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
It's signed first. Usually, that's the way it goes. And it's sometimes the record producer. I think these days they can be a record producer. Music's changed so much,
Yeah.
in the sense that the rap or hip hop or pop that my children are listening to, it just a lot of these guys don't even know how to play instruments. The one they copy riffs from old songs, and they have the very rudimentary skills. But if you sit them behind a drum set, some of them might be able to do it now, and probably somebody's going to call in and say that, look, I can play drums.
Yeah.
But the people that I've met mess around with computers.
Okay.
Whereas when I record a Hubcaps album, I play all the instruments. Like, I really play the instruments. There's a drum set, bass, guitars, keyboards. I just I play the real instruments.
Right.
And so and that's not to say that other people don't know how. But in modern pop music, you don't even get those instruments. It's just very computerized, sort of keyboard based. And if that's your cup of tea, wonderful. All the more power to you, because this is the trendy music of today. And some of it I enjoy, some of it I don't. But it's not really my cup of tea. I think even the lyrics are definitely not my cup of tea at all.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they don't make any sense. They're just sort of cool sounding phrases, one after another. There's no story. There's no meaning. It's kind of like, and my sons are like, listen to this, man. And I'm like, I'm listening to it, man. I don't like it. But it's like I said, if it's somebody's cup of tea, then it's nothing away from me. I still prefer my Rolling Stones and Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers any day.
And so your music, your genre that you perform and play is more rock based.
Yeah, I guess that once again, these should be easy questions, but what is rock these days? This is my problem, because when the Impersonators, this is another stuff, I talk a lot. There's another story. When the Impersonators got signed with FBP Music Group, one of the first things that the label wanted to do with us was to establish what genre we're basically all about, or representing, or what have you.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, it's pop rock. And then the label had Dennis Whitesell pressed play on one iPad and said, this is pop rock. And I'm like, oh, okay, so we're definitely not pop rock. Yeah. And I'm like, how about rock? And then it's like, this is rock. And I'm like, whoa, we're definitely not rock, because that sounded like heavy rock to me. What I would label as heavy rock. And then, like, are we pop? And then there's like this female, all computerized, auto-tuned. I'm like, okay, so we're not pop. And so we did this for a long time, and then turned out, when I had to do some research, like, here's a link to this page. It'll outline all the genres you can think of that exist today. And so I followed the link, and here am I thinking I'm going to end up with a page that has about, I don't know, 30 genres. Wrong. It was 50 genres with maybe 20 or 30 sub-genres each.
Okay.
It was like a zillion of them, like post-punk,
Yeah.
punk, whatever. Punk had like 12 different categories. And I'm like, I listened to example, it's punk.
Yeah.
You know, it's like punk. Why neo-punk? What? And I'm like having to still come up with this, you know, nobody's recording anything until we know the genre, right? And I'm like, I'm never going to be able to come up with a genre from these because we just don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
That's the conclusion that I came to.
Oh,
my music does not exist anymore. And so what we ended up doing was sort of creating this own genre, which was retro flavored pop rock. You know, yeah,
okay.
retro flavored pop rock.
So now you have, so that's your genre.
That's what I tell people these days. Retro flavored pop
Okay.
rock. Oh, and the label what it said. Hold on, here's the whole thing. Retro flavored pop rock with a modern twist.
It sounds like a cocktail.
Oh well, you know, it just, you know, exactly.
Have one, please.
You know, and you know, it's just like coming up with that genre was harder than recording an album. You know?
Oh, I bet. I can only imagine. That sounds just crazy. Well, that sounds very cool. So now, what are you up to these days?
Well, right now, there's going to be a new, the Impersonators album that we worked on for quite a few years, actually 3, I think, all in all. Because in the beginning, we didn't have a lot of money and we just had to go one single at a time, record here, record there. It just came out in, the album came out in March, late March the 26th. And it's titled Life of Grant. It's been very well received. And obviously, we're very stoked about that.
Yeah.
The both award organizations, the Josie Awards and ISSA Awards, have nominated the album in the Album of the Year category.
Awesome! Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And on top of that, you know, the Impersonators and yours truly got 7 nominations at the ISSA Awards and 4 at the Josie Awards. So it's been a wonderful year for us, to be really honest with you. And over here, once again, I think that this is what happens when you have a great PR person and label head. This goes back to Michael Stover being a kick-ass person, and just really somebody who can make things happen. So, you know, I could be big-headed and say that, look, this is how brilliant I am. But the truth is that this guy works like a dog. And
it takes a team, right?
Right. It takes a team. And he does everything for his artists. So I'm very pleased to be working with him. And I'm just very, very happy with all the nominations, even if they don't turn into awards. It's a great honor.
That's definitely very exciting. So where can people, before we start wrapping things up, where can people find you, follow you, get hear your music?
If the best place to find everything is if you go to www.tomtikka.com. It's got all the links that you need. It's got a little, nowadays web pages, it's kind of cool because you can create them where you have the main stuff, and then there are these tabs like bio and whatever. The Impersonators has basically their own tab.
Sure.
And now, of course, you asked what I'm actually doing right now is I'm finishing up a solo album that's going to come out in the fall, and the very first single is going to come out on June 18th, I think, if I remember correctly. And so that's what I'm up to right now. It's just taking up all my time. But yeah, www.tomtikka.com is the place to go. And obviously, both the Impersonators and Tom Tikka and the Missing Hubcaps are on all streaming platforms.
Awesome.
So
I will pull your links and I'll put them in the description of the episode so people can reach out to you directly and find you and follow you and support you, all that good stuff.
Sounds great.
You did share a lot of information. Any last words of wisdom or advice you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, enjoy life. Yeah, I mean, I think it was I want to say it was Abe Lincoln who said that it's not the years in your life that count, but rather the life in your years. That's one of my favorite quotes.
I like that.
Yeah, it's what I try to live by, because, you know, life goes by so fast. It's when you're in your 20s, it's kind of like you're burning it away. It really, you're not aware of the fact that it'll all come crashing down at some point.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, it's weird because my eldest son will be 18 this year.
Yeah.
And I think it's incredible. I mean, I was young when I got him, but still, it's incredible that I have an 18-year-old son. Yeah. And I remember when he was just a teeny tiny baby, I was walking around at the hospital holding him, like kind of showing him off to her. This is my son, you know, and now he's taller than me,
Aw.
bigger than me, plays ice hockey, and it's just like huge. And I'm like, you know, my baby, right?
Yeah.
That's how fast life goes, you
Yes.
know. And just thinking about the fact that I lost my dad a couple of years ago, you know, I wish I had spent more time with him. So I guess the final piece of advice is just don't waste time on people that don't deserve you. Don't waste time on anything that makes you miserable. Just spend your time wisely. Be with the people you love. Be with the people that love you, and spend it all on something that makes you feel wonderful.
I love it.
And can't go wrong with that.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Tom, for being a guest today and sharing your story. Congratulations on your nominations. I'm sure you're going to do very well. Hopefully 2021 is an amazing year for you. And you'll have to come back and give us an update, after, maybe in the fall or something. After when are
Sounds great.
nominations? When do they make a decision? Is it in the fall?
Yeah, it's going to be. I think that the ISSA awards are going to be in August and Josie Awards in September. Yeah, so it might be that, you know, I'm like, next time I come on the show, I'm like, oh, but you know, like I said, it's a great honor to be nominated. I'm not really expecting to win. I'm just happy that, you know, something that you know, my music moves people.
Yeah.
That's really all I ever wanted to do.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Kempel of Label Free Podcast. Live your best life. You must live label free. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, follow, all that good stuff. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.